Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Lost. Episode 9. Chapter 57. Alejandro. We had returned earlier today, and to my surprise, it was a full house. Scarlet, Raven, and her pups were all here. It seemed Scarlet hadn't known when me and Kia would be back, so had come to help with the kids. We were having a meeting later, but Maria had quickly filled us in on what they had learned. Dante, he was the target. It all made sense from the start. Even Enrique had tried to attack him. I just wished I knew why they wanted him. What exactly did his blood offer them? Now the smell of food wafted through the house, prepping for dinner tonight. Kiera was baking with Scarlet and even Maria was making some desserts. Everyone had been happy to hear the news of the new pup. Chris seemed a little quieter, but I'm sure the concern for his mate and pup would do that to anyone. Rayhana had bought all the kids and women new clothes. The girls were all in glittering dresses that reminded me of disco balls. The women were in equally sparkly dresses as well. I wondered if I should grab a pair of sunglasses. As for the boys, they were in matching shirts, pants, and boots, only Dante was refusing to wear them. He was sitting on the sofa opposite Rayhana, who was in a deep pink sequined dress, glaring at the clothes on the sofa next to him. I am not matching babies. He scowled across the sitting room, directing it towards Rayhana. The living room in itself looked like a tornado had hit it. There were toys, cups, clothes, as it seemed all the younger pups had changed in here, as well as Rayhana's table full of makeup products. It was obvious she had decided to go full out on dressing everyone up for this small dinner in celebration of her new addition. I wasn't complaining, it was good to see them all enjoying shit, but the makeup and the glitter were too much. Oh, zip it, stop being dramatic, you'll look cute. Rayhana replied to Dante as she applied makeup on Dulsanra, who I felt sorry for. Kiera rushed to heal her and Dante upon our return, but it did little to help raise her energy levels. She was getting worse. She now lay there, her eyes closed, whilst I had to admit Rayhana did a good job of covering those veins that covered her. Catalia was sitting against the far wall, holding a teddy bear tight to her chest, staring out at the sky from the window. Perfect, Rayhana smiled proudly, finishing applying Dulsanra's lipstick. The woman could barely keep her eyes open and Rayhana was using her as a makeup doll. What was wrong with her? I am not wearing these clothes, you wear them. Dante shot at Rayhana. Dante, listens to your sister. I remarked, wanting this conversation over with. No. She's annoying. I am not. You'll look so handsome. Look, I even chose a shirt for you to match your eyes. Come on, you're making me sad. She pouted. I glanced at her as she looked at Dante. Yeah, that worked on everyone, but a no is a no. Or do you want me to answer you in a different language? Dante remarked arrogantly. Oh, don't show off your bilingual skills. I can speak several languages too. Rayhana replied. But you still don't understand a no in simple English. Dante replied, smirking victoriously as Rayhana pouted and he lay down on the sofa, closing his eyes. That boy is a bit like you. Dulsanra said, opening her eyes. Rayhana smiled, holding up a small mirror so Dulsanra could see what she had done. "Thanks, it's gorgeous." She smiled at her friend. "You look a tad better," I added, making her smile grow. "Thanks, King Burrito." "Daddy, look, I am Maleficent," Skyla said as she did a twirl in her green dress, that made her eyes look even greener. And Rayhana had put black lipstick on her. "Seriously? You do?" "Yes, I just need horns. Now, give me £1 for swearing." She held her hand out and I frowned. "Later," I growled, leaving the room, being careful not to step on any of the scattered clothes or toys. I heard the giggling from the side of the room where Sienna was busy playing with Aaron, Tatum, and the Westwood Five. Dante had a point. Why were they all dressed exactly the same? One sparkly princess with 7 bodyguards. That's what that shit looked like. I shook my head, leaving the room and almost knocking into Rayhan. "Seriously, this place is a tad too small," I growled, making him smirk. "Or you are just too big to maneuver smoothly. Jealous that I'm taller?" "Not at all." He smirked. He had his hair pulled back, making him look a bit less annoying. "What's the count now?" I asked, knowing he'll get what I meant. "Just another 20, stuff has slowed, it's hard to find those who fit all the criteria." Although the witch the coven sent to check the blood said 15 of the previous batch weren't of virgins. He replied quietly, glancing down the hall, "But it was just us." Other than near the far side, but it was only Liam and Chris who were talking to Darien and Serena. "Kiera, so how far along are you? Any chance it's twins?" Raven asked Rayhana. We were all sitting around the table, eating and chatting. There were a huge variety of dishes, from grilled platters, wraps, enchiladas, and much more, spread across the huge table before us. "Oh, it's definitely one," Rayhana replied, kissing Chris. I smiled as I sat between my twins. Although I didn't remember anything about any of them, in the short time that I had spent with them, I already felt like I was one of them. I mean I was, but with no memories, it was daunting. I planted a soft kiss on top of my little Maleficent's head and then one on Catalia, who wore a deep plum sequined dress. She was still holding her teddy bear tightly in one arm and had refused to put it down to eat. "Cat, want me to break the chicken for you?" I asked quietly, seeing her using just her fork and one-handedly trying to break it. She shook her head, her right arm tightening around her teddy. She was doing it again, refusing to use both her hands. "Okay," I replied softly, caressing her soft sandy locks. I kept my voice low, not wanting to draw too much attention, although obviously everyone could hear. Next to Kot was Azura, and then Mom and Dad. Alejandro was opposite me, with Dante next to him. Dante had stopped talking to me lately, and that unnerved me. Even now, when he looked up at me, I felt that rush of anger and fear rush through me. I broke eye contact, wondering what hold the Jinn had on me. Was it possible he was seeing everything through my eyes? Was he getting insight into everything going on around us? Amor mio! I was pulled from my thoughts by Alejandro calling me. I gave him a small smile before I turned to Skyla, who was adding salad to her plate. "Want some, dearie?" It is good for you, my pretty, she asked me, giving me a small sly smirk. Sky, that would be the evil witch from Snow White, not Maleficent. Azura decided to input. Oh yeah. I'm a combination of villains. Skyla decided, poking her fork at Azura. Be careful, blue-eyed bat. I will have your heart and enjoy the beauty from devouring it. Girls are so loud. Dante remarked, sipping his juice just as Renji knocked something over and Jace pushed him, making the younger one begin to cry. Jace, behave. Raven warned as Liam comforted Renji. Renji is baby. Theo added, only for Mom to try to distract him from making matters worse, but Renji had heard and began crying louder. I take it back. Dante sighed as Sienna giggled from where she sat next to Maria. She looked pretty in a cream sequin dress, the multicolored sequins creating a green-blue shine to it. Dulsanra was sitting back in the armchair that had been placed near the table, and Rayhan was feeding her. The love they had for one another was obvious in their eyes. I smiled as Rayhan raised Dulsanra's hand to his lips, kissing her wrist. Even in the hardest of times, he was there for her. I returned to my food, listening to the talking around me, when I felt a strong, intense rush of anger through me, one that was not mine. My heart skipped a beat and for a moment, it felt like an out-of-body experience. Everything faded, and when I looked around, I could hear nothing but the raging anger that was consuming me. A flare of pain rushed through me, and my eyes snapped to the knife on the table. What was going on? Alejandro. I called him through the link, my voice sounding panicked. I could feel my wolf's agitation and I stood up quickly. He frowned, standing up instantly, and within seconds he was in front of me. His touch sent a wave of coolness through me and I smiled smoothly, noticing everyone watching us and not wanting anyone to get worried. What is it? He asked, his dark eyes piercing into mine. I just felt emotions that weren't mine. I replied, locking my arms around his waist tightly. When he was close, those feelings were at bay. I could no longer hear the voice in my head since he had made me his once more, but something told me he still lingered within some part of my mind. Was that why every time Dante and I locked eyes I felt something, because the thing inside of me was afraid of him? If that was so, then why did he want Dante? I wish we knew of a way to kill him. I just hoped Alejandro found the answer. I felt useless as it was. Want to go for a walk or something to clear your mind? He asked quietly, cupping my face. Oh no, I'm fine. I was not going to ruin this dinner. All right. He pulled me close, kissing my neck. I bit my lip, stopping myself from moaning loudly. When he pulled away, I felt calmer, taking my seat once more. It was much later. Alejandro, Maria, Mom, and the rest of the men were heading out to the pack house for a meeting. I found it a little strange that they weren't using the home office or that I wasn't invited. Did Alejandro not trust me? I mean, I don't blame him, because I was beginning to get scared of the sudden surges of emotions and feelings that consumed me. We won't be too long, he said, coming over to me. Nothing important for me to know. I couldn't help but ask. It ain't nothing too important. Enjoy time with the ladies. He jerked his head towards the living room, and I nodded. His black shirt stretched over his chest and arms, and I tried not to let my gaze linger on him. It wasn't too important, but it was important, I could sense that, and the slight hesitation behind his words. "Okay," I said, "I'll keep an eye on the kiddies." He nodded, kissing me hard. His enticing scent made my heart skip a beat, and when he pulled away, I gave him a warm smile. I wouldn't let on that I knew he didn't trust me, because if he was hiding something, it wasn't because of me but the evil presence that lingered in the corners of my mind. Like a thief in the night, I was unable to pinpoint it unless he showed his emotions. I watched them walk away. Mom gave me a small smile before I turned and walked back into the living room. The kids were happily playing, and as I watched Raven, I couldn't help but smile at the sight of her with her 5 little munchkins. I could just picture them as these big alpha males with their tiny bite-sized mama. "Carter baby, stop," Raven said, watching him biting onto the edge of the table. "How old are they now?" I asked, taking a seat next to Dulsanra, placing my hand on her leg and letting my healing pour into her. "They will be 3 in a few months," Raven replied, turning as she watched Azura scanning the curtains. "Zuzu, what?" "I'm not doing anything," Azura replied in a scandalized voice. "I swear. No one trusts you," Dante remarked. "What's not to trust?" she replied, watching him unblinkingly. "Did you know psychotic killers tend not to blink?" Dante stated. "I'm no killer and that isn't true." "It is. Isn't. Guys, stop. Seriously, positive energy," Raven reprimanded. "Zuzu, you're a big girl, right? Behave, okay?" "Oh yes, I forgot that he's my baby nephew." Dante rolled his eyes. "We both know who acts more childish." "Okay, smart guy," Rayhana added before the argument blew up even more. "Dante isn't feeling well," Catalia said softly as she sat down next to her brother. "Be nice to him, please." She was still holding that teddy tightly and I wondered if she needed extra comfort. I would have gone over, but with Dante right there, something deep within me was telling me to stay away, for his safety. "I'm always nice, Cot." Azura turned around, not sounding very convincing. "I hope the meeting goes well." Rayhana sighed, "I was meant to attend, but they told me I wasn't needed." "Well, maybe you just need a break, babe," Raven replied. "I agree, plus you are pregnant, you need to take it easy," Dulsanra reminded her. "I'm totally fine, I don't need to be bubble wrapped." "But Chris would want you all wrapped up," Dulsanra replied weakly. "No, trust me, he'll prefer me unwrap, kids." I coughed, making the other women laugh. "Oh oopsie." Raven smiled. "Hey, you're one to talk, we saw Uncle get all handsy," Rayhana replied, smirking. "I'm sure most aren't paying attention," Raven added, watching the kids suspiciously as I tried not to blush. "Of course, we aren't," Skyla remarked from where she was building something from Legos. "Oi, Theo! Stop! Careful that the kids don't take the Legos, Sky," I said, getting up and instead sitting down on the floor next to her, brushing a small piece away from Tatum. "Why do babies put everything in their mouths?" Sky rolled her eyes as she continued to work on her creation. Because it's how they explore, I'm sure you did it too. I replied with a smile, ruffling her dark hair. Maybe. She shrugged. You know, when everything calms down, we need to take a family holiday abroad. Rayhan mused as she stretched, patting her stomach. I think that would be a lovely idea. I agreed. Somewhere with a beach, just the image of Alejandro in swimming trunks with water dripping down his body made my stomach flutter and that familiar ache settle into his core once more. Oh, I'm all for it. A beach would be amazing. Rayhana agreed. I can imagine us chasing after the kitties. Raven said, with an amused smile. Oh, don't worry, me and Del will keep them in check with our magic, we won't even need any nannies. It was something I think we would all love to do once things were better again. Even though we didn't know when that would be, just discussing something and making plans seemed to lighten the mood considerably. A reminder that times won't always be so dark and trying. We talked for a while longer, from the plans of a holiday to just general things that they had planned for the coming months, before we finally began putting the kids to bed. Catalia had sat silently, and even when Sandra and I tried to talk to her, she gave short replies, clutching her teddy tightly. We had all settled the younger kids to bed and I had kissed all the little kitties good night, apart from Dante, whom I had just told to get some rest and wished him good night from afar before coming to the kitchen. I had a headache coming on, which was kind of weird, and decided to make myself some tea after asking the girls if they wanted any. Rayhan, Mom, and Dad had returned from the meeting, but Alejandro wasn't back yet. I wondered if he had other things to tend to. I had just poured the hot water into my mug when I heard footsteps behind me. By the scent, I knew who it was before I even turned, spotting Dante going to the fridge. He took the 6-pint bottle of milk, and I hurried over, seeing how he was struggling and using both arms to carry the bottle. Here, let me get it. I said, but the moment my hand brushed his, a searing pain shot through my arm, and it felt like I had just been burned. I jerked away from him, looking down at my hand, which looked perfectly normal. I felt a sharp pain rip through my head and arm, making me stumble as I clutched my shoulder, my eyes stinging as I tried to breathe. Once the pain became slightly more bearable, I exhaled. You should really be careful, Dante remarked, taking the milk to the counter. Dante, I whispered softly. He looked at me, his eyes hard, and I felt my heart squeeze with sadness. Memories or not, this was my son, but the hostility in his eyes hurt so much. I remained silent, watching him as he got a glass and poured himself milk. The sound of the milk splashing into the glass, the thudding of our hearts, it all seemed to intensify. Then suddenly I felt an influx of emotions course through me, but this time they weren't mine. The hatred within me was terrifying, a level I had never felt. The strong, intense urge to grab the biggest knife I could overcame me and my blazing purple eyes schemed the worktops before it fell on the knife block. I walked over to it as if my legs had a mind of their own, before reality hit me hard and I willed myself to stop. Grabbing onto the counter to control myself. My heart was pounding as I tried to regain use of my senses. The glaring hatred within me felt so foreign. I had never felt such hate for anyone. I turned towards Dante, feeling his eyes on me, and to my surprise, they were soft. The usual calculating look in them was gone. "Dante, go to bed now," I commanded breathlessly, trying to battle the foreign emotions within me. "Please," I begged. He drank his milk slowly, his eyes not leaving my face as I fought this with everything I had. Just when I felt like I might not be able to do anything more, he put the glass down and once again he looked like just a young boy. He gave me a nod, as he walked off to the door and paused to look back at me. He gave me a small smile. "I love you, Mama." His words shattered something inside, and I clamped my hand over my mouth to stifle the sob that threatened to escape. The door shut behind him, and I felt a wave of guilt overcome me. I had almost hurt him. I needed to stay away. I was a danger to everyone around me. "We've found a location, but we haven't pinpointed it." Last time he knew Kiera was around, but I don't think they were banking on the pup knowing those locations. Darien was saying as we gathered around my desk. Both my deltas were here, as well as Carmen. But if the Jinn does try to probe Enrique's mind, there are chances he'll learn of it. Either way, I have a plan, I said, lighting a cigarette. "What plan?" Maria asked, doing her best not to wrinkle her nose. Got to love how she wasn't able to hide her dislike for things like smoking, no matter how much she tried. "Kiera," I said, hating that I was going to resort to this. Not everyone in this room knew what Dante had hinted at me, and as much as I hated it, I trusted everyone in this room and would share the truth with them. "What about her?" Scarlet asked sharply. "The Jinn still has a hold on her, and she's feeling emotions that aren't hers," I told them quietly. It hurt, but there was nothing I could do about it. Even the plan I had, I didn't like it, not one bit. "Really?" Liam frowned. "And what exactly is your plan?" Scarlet asked, frowning as she glanced at Elijah. "I'll make her learn of our plan indirectly, and the Jinn will most like hear it. I'm sure of it. Obviously, it won't be our real plan, but if it comes off that she hears it by accident, the chances are they'll believe it. If played out properly, she'll eat it up and in turn, the Jinn will, so when we actually carry out our plan, they won't know what hit them. Kiera can tell when someone's lying," Elijah added with a frown. "I know, that's why I'm telling half of you one plan and the other half another plan. Then I'm having two of you have a conversation, and I'll handle the rest," I explained confidently. Rayhan frowned, running his hand through his hair. "So, if she can hear it all, see it all, then she knows most of what's been going on?" he asked. "Is she safe around the kids?" A flash of irritation rushed through me. I know he was just worried, but I also knew Kiera was strong. She would not hurt them. She's still my mate and she's still the queen. Kiera is not weak. I growled, my eyes flashing. "I get that," he replied, frowning. "Rayhan's concern is fair too," Scarlet said quietly. "The Luna won't fail us," Drake added. "We will await your plan Alpha, and act accordingly." I nodded, "Yeah, that's more like it." "I agree. Luna Kiera is strong, she is the queen for a reason. Let's not forget she is a blessed wolf," Carmen added, crossing her arms. "What is the cost to kill him anyway?" Darien asked. Just that blade and got to be done in one stab. I replied lightly, not wanting to share the actual price. I knew I had people who would try to take that chance in my stead, and I couldn't do that. Not to any one of them. Plus I needed to make sure it gets done. I was the fastest and most powerful. We talked for a little while longer, and I told half of them to wait outside. I gave Elijah, Scarlett, Liam, and Darien one plan, which was actually the fake one. Then I called the others back in and told them the real plan. Dismissed, I said, taking a drag on my cigarette, motioning for them to all leave. Rayhan nodded, about to walk out. He paused and glanced at Maria, who was holding a book from the shelf behind me. You go along, there's a few things I wanted to discuss with Alejandro, Yahayatai. She said, giving him a small smile. He nodded, although I knew he was curious as to what we wanted to talk about. Run along, kid, it's adult talk. I mocked. You know, I'm the same age as Kiera, right? Ah, I guess compared to the old man you are, I must seem like a kid. Smirking, he shut the door before I could reply. I growled as Maria shut the book and slid it back onto the shelf. What did you want to discuss? I want to know the actual price of killing a jinn. My stomach twisted, caught off guard. Like always, she had that emotionless, perfectly sculpted face that didn't betray any thoughts. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I realized she had been the one in the garden earlier. As quiet as an assassin. Which meant Maria already knew what the price was. You already know what it is. I said coldly. A life. The wielder will die, correct? She asked. She walked over to the desk, standing on the opposite side, her hands folded in front of her. That's not your concern, I will handle it. You will die to save Kiera, Dulsanra, and Dante. She stated, her eyes hard. 3 lives in return for 1, it's pretty fair, I replied emotionlessly. It's weird, but there was once a time, I didn't care if I died, but now. I wanted to live, for them. For Kiera, for my kids, for my family. I wanted to be part of all the weird family shit we did together. The celebrations, the movie nights, the meals, and time together. I wanted to see Ray and Rayhana's kids grow up. I wanted to play that role as their grandfather, to be there for them where I know Raphael would have been. I wanted to show Leo he isn't alone. To bid the kids good night, to wake to Kiera's smile every day. Fair. Then I will ask you to allow me to do it. Her words sent a flash of coldness through me, my eyes blazing red as I looked at her, narrowing my eyes. No, I growled, but she didn't even flinch. Why not? She asked icily, folding her arms. Even with her sparkly dress, she meant business. Do not forget that I am from the Ahmar Kamar pack. We pride ourselves in stealth. Where do you think Rayhan gets it from? I can sneak up on him when others keep him busy. She snapped as if she was talking to a kid. I don't care if he got it from you or Santa Claus. I am not letting you sacrifice yourself. I growled, my aura rolling off of me. That made her step back, but even then, she stood her ground defiantly. I have far less to lose, Alejandro. Unlike you, My children have grown up, started lives of their own. I am not needed. I don't care if they are 10 or 50, they will always need you. You can't leave them, when they have already lost their dad. But your children are barely even 10. Catalia needs you more than ever. Dante is holding the world upon his shoulders. He will need a father's guidance, that much power in such a young boy. He needs a father to support him, to be there for him, to show him the way and tell him that it's going to be okay. He has Elijah, Liam, and Rayhan. He won't be alone really. Alejandro, and Kiera? Will you just leave her in this world alone? Will you be so cruel? That felt like a gut punch. Kiera. Life without me. She would feel it as much as I would if I had to live a life without her. I wouldn't even want to live without her. I am not trying to be cruel. I have to do this. You have an option to be here with her. Can you imagine how hard it will be for her? To be queen until Dante is old enough, to carry on all alone. I know it'll be hard. I growled, crushing my cigarette in my fist. Exactly, and just how it would be hard for her, that is how I find my life without Raphael. I looked up sharply, her poised front cracking and the agony in her eyes killed. Maria. Look, it's just I'm tired, Alejandro. I want to be with him. I'm living my days without my sunshine, I spend the nights without my stars. The emptiness inside, it's only growing. I miss him and I just want to return to him. Let me do this, Alejandro, for my sake, because I can't carry on like this. I told myself I would never beg anyone for anything. However, I am pleading with everything I have. Please let me do this. I looked into her grey eyes that held raw pain, but what she was asking for, to let her sacrifice herself. How do I accept that? Alejandro, please, she pleaded, taking a seat on a chair opposite my desk. You're asking me to send you to your death? I said quietly. How do you expect me to agree to that? I know that it's hard living without your mate, but I looked down at my hands, the slight scorch mark on my palm healing over before I took another cigarette out. I am asking you to make the smarter choice. Someone who yearns to be by their mate's side and has adult children, over someone who is leaving their 8-year-old as alpha and their mate behind. It makes obvious sense which is the better option. She explained quietly. And how will you tell Rayhana that her mother is going to sacrifice herself? The very same way you would have had to tell Skyla and Catalia. The only difference is Rayhana is a woman, not a child. Her logic. Even if it made sense, I am not going to let her do this. I couldn't. No, Maria. I took a drag on my cigarette. I'm doing this. If you don't agree, then I will take this to Elijah. She replied, her eyes flashing dangerously. Don't do that shit, obviously he'll side you. I growled coldly. Elijah will side with the one for who it makes more sense to do this. I force myself out of bed every morning to carry on. I love you all, but it's hard without half your soul. She sighed, sitting back in the seat and crossing her legs. A pose that wasn't very Maria, who would usually sit with her legs tucked to the side and hands in her lap. Right now it was as if I was talking to a boss, not a prim and proper Miss Perfect, but she is a queen after all. Her grey eyes watched me sharply. From heaven, I will watch over my family, but you have so much left to do. I don't like to set an ultimatum, but we both know that there's more logic in me doing this. So please, if Raphael and I ever meant anything to you, you will allow me one." A menacing growl left my lips, my eyes blazing red. "Do not use that shit on me, you know what RAF meant to me and that I consider you my sister. I am not letting you. Do not growl at me like an animal." She snapped, irritation clear in her voice. Did she actually just call me an animal? We were, but she sure made it sound like an insult. I glared at her and she simply shook her head as if she was talking to a pup. "One Maria, I am no longer asking your opinion. I am doing this because I want to. I have contemplated suicide, several times, Alejandro, but I will not go against my beliefs. That is not what Raphael would have wanted, so let me go in an honorable way. All I want is to return to my mate," she said softly, her eyes glittering with tears, yet even then she refused to let them fall. I sat back, letting out a breath. Yet, I could see her fading with each passing year. She had held on for so long. When you are mated to an alpha, the bond is even stronger. And what about Rayhan and Rayhana? How will you tell them? I will talk to Rayhana and Alsanra, but Rayhan, he'll blow. Yes, so I will leave him a message. I will tell him how by oath I made you promise to let me do this and that I did not allow you to tell anyone. I ain't lying or any of that shit, especially when he won't forgive me. Besides, we all know I don't follow rules or keep secrets. I already have one nephew wanting to kill you. Won't be lying because I am holding you to one. If you loved Raphael, then you will uphold this promise." A memory from long ago flashed through my mind. When I had said to her to answer me if she loved RAF, she was using that shit on me now. I ain't promised shit. I growled. You will promise me, for our family and for me. This is where my happiness lays. I wish to be released from these shackles, she persisted, running her fingers lightly over her mate mark. Her eyes looked haunted, and she did look tired. Even if I understood she needed this, it still hurt. To agree to her demand wasn't going to be easy. I ran my hand down my face as she stared at me, waiting for me to agree. Her grey eyes filled with sadness and hope, and it messed with me. Why did these Rossi women have a hold on me? I swear there is some shady shit going on there, or I'm just getting soft. Maybe RI did some voodoo shit or something. Can't put anything past her and Del. Fine. Talk to RI, and I'm talking to her too, like I want to make sure she's okay with it. A small smile crossed her lips. Thank you, I will. She promised softly. Our eyes met and the severity of what I agreed to. No, this was wrong, she couldn't do this shit. I could tell Rayhan or stop her. But her next words made my thoughts come to a painful stop. Thank you for understanding, I cannot wait to be by his side once more, she whispered, a single tear escaping her eye. She looked as if a burden had been lifted from her. The spark of hope in those grey eyes told me just how hard living was for her, and I realized it may be painful for us, but it was something Maria needed. For herself. I stood up, walking over to the window and stared at the moon in the night sky. RAF. We needed you. You left far too fast. Was this the right choice? Her heels sounded on the wooden floors as she made her way over to me, stepping up beside me as she looked at the sky. "He would be proud of you, so proud," she whispered, as if knowing what I was thinking. I looked down at her. Her eyes held so much emotion, and I knew even the decision she had made wouldn't be easy for her. Talking to Ri, having to say goodbye to everyone. And of you. You carried on after him, standing in as Luna, so Del could live her life, get her degree. You remained strong even when I could see how much pain you were in. You've always been good at hiding your emotions. I looked down at her and she smiled slightly. Of course, I was born to be Raphael's Luna, raised to be a queen, and I will handle things just like he would expect of me, she said proudly, and I smirked. Yeah, a king and queen who deserved every ounce of the praise they were given. There would never be another Raphael or Maria. I heard you're quite good at being a flirt too. I smirked, making her smile vanish, and was that a faint blush? Whoever said that is Liam doesn't lie. I mocked. So I can actually start to believe that you and RAF actually consummated your bond and didn't just adopt Ray and RI. I swear you come off so stiff at times. She frowned at me, and I snickered. Even Marcel didn't deny that shit. I am going to have a word with Liam, I told him not to say anything. This is Liam, the guy's smart but he's also clueless. I think Kiera got the tact and brains from that duo. She laughed lightly and shook her head. Well, you are a tattletale too. I am not. I growled. She gave me a look as if saying, did I really believe that? Well, I do kinda like stirring shit up. It's rather sad, but men often don't realize women can be more dangerous than a man. It's a shame for them, she said haughtily, and I knew she was still trying to hide her embarrassment. Yeah, especially one of the Rossi queens. And this one cannot wait to return to her king. Her voice was so quiet, yet her words were clear. The hope as clear as the moon in the sky. Don't feel guilty, a king must always make the right decision even if it's not the easiest, and this is the right one. She placed her hand on my cheek for a moment, giving me a small nod and smile. I looked down at her, then back at the night sky. Yeah? Well, it sure isn't easy. For her happiness. Will you get angry at me RAF for allowing her to do this? I returned home, the weight of the decision made heavy on my shoulders. Right now, I felt useless. A Jin from years ago, still after this family, or more like waiting for Dante to be born. What powers did he possess? Or the bigger question was, what exactly was Dante? Something told me he was no ordinary wolf or lichen. I get that history says no two lichens are born at once, but with all the shit and power that everyone seemed to have, I think those rules may no longer apply. But even as a lichen, I didn't have that power before I shifted. Born with red eyes. Like how Liam's cerulean eyes were stuck magnetic blue like his wolves once he came into his power. His powers were always brimming to the max, a little like Dante. So what was him? I paused outside his bedroom, opening the door silently. I looked inside, he was fast asleep, his breathing steady, and he looked at peace despite the angry veins that covered his skin. Dante Rossi. He looked more like the child he was meant to be when asleep than when awake. I closed the door silently, giving the guard outside his room a nod before I walked down the hall to my bedroom. I opened the door to see Kiera was fast asleep, but what surprised me was that she was still fully dressed, her arms wrapped around herself and a small frown on her forehead. Had something happened? Pulling off my shirt, I walked over to the bed, and sat down. I brushed her long locks off her face, looking over her body. No matter how she kept me distracted and san. I wish I could talk to her about this. To ask her her opinion, but I couldn't, and deep down the doubtful question remained. Was I doing the right thing? Marcel, I awoke to a phone ringing and frowned. Sitting up, I picked it up. Alejandro? Hello. I answered it, wondering what had happened. 1,000 thoughts rushed through my mind. Hey, sorry to bother you at this hour. Alejandro's quiet voice came. Sure, it was past 3 in the morning, but just from his voice, I could tell he was conflicted. It doesn't matter, you called for a reason. Tell me what's wrong? I asked, standing up and began pacing my bedroom. He sighed heavily, and I heard him take a drag on a cigarette. Maria talked to me today, it's about the price of killing a jinn. I narrowed my eyes. When I had been there earlier, when we had filled each other in on our trips, he never mentioned a price. What price? I asked sharply. Don't growl, I need my ears. He growled back. I'm just asking because you never mentioned a price. I countered. Yeah, well, there is a price. He filled me in pretty fast. The wielder of the dagger would die, and Maria wanted to be the one to do it. I don't know what the right thing to do is, Marcel. Do I let her do it, knowing she'll die? How does that make sense? I sighed heavily, running my hand through my hair. Look, Al, some of us manage to cope, somehow after our mates die. In my case, Andorra severed the bond between me and my mate, before she was killed. It's hard to survive without a mate, even now when I remember her, that pain rips me apart inside. Maria has lived for years without Raphael, she needs him and there is no way for her to carry on without him. I see her far less than you and every time she's lost a lot of weight and looks even more tired with each passing year. She's already dying, Alejandro. Let her go. I said, sighing. Maria was a beautiful woman, one I knew many of the alphas who had lost their mates or simply hadn't found theirs had been interested in, but Maria belonged to Raphael, and it was obvious there was no man on earth who could take his place or ease her pain. So, I should allow her to do it. You know she doesn't want me to tell Rayhan. Yes, and you have promised her already. Giving her hope and then taking it away is wrong. I said quietly. Yeah? You're right. I don't think I'm ready to lose her. It's me up. How do you think her kids are going to take this? That shit is going to be rough. Life is never easy, but we do what is ultimately for the better. In this case between you and Maria, it makes sense for her to do it. Silence ensued, and I heard him sigh heavily. I didn't envy him. Being king came with so many burdens. Yeah. I guess you're right. He said after a moment. You are doing great, Alejandro. Sometimes these things aren't hard. The decisions we make will impact others. If Maria wasn't deteriorating, I would have offered to do it myself, but Leo isn't ready to become alpha yet. I frowned hearing a twig snap outside and frowning walked over to the open window, and peered out. Silence. It was late, everyone was asleep, I'm sure Leo stayed in tonight. Yeah, no, Leo needs you. If anyone was to do it, I'd do it, but Maria's as stubborn as her daughter. Or her daughter is as stubborn as her. I joked. Yeah, either of that shit. Alejandro sighed. I chuckled dryly. Get some rest, brother, you need it. Maria knows what she's doing, but if you want a third opinion, talk to Elijah. Yet I might, I'll see. He hung up and I put my phone down, scanning the grounds below. Shaking my head, I closed the window and returned to bed, unable to get rid of the shock of what Alejandro had told me. The price was not small. I sighed heavily, all traces of sleep now gone. I couldn't wait for these dark times to pass. Leo, I stared up at the night sky, there wasn't long now for my 18th birthday, and I'll shift. I couldn't wait, wanting to come into power. I knew I had it in me. I trained hard, and pushed myself every single day to surpass my limits. I could feel the power rippling through me, at the brink of release. Power, I needed, power I craved. This world was stuck up and even until this day those with power and money got away. Yet, Alejandro had tried to create an ideal world where pacts were allies, but that was all bullshit. He established peace on the surface, there was so much crap going on the low, and of course, the so-called elite could do whatever shit they wanted and get away with it. Rayhan. Like always, the mere thought of that sent blistering hatred rushing through me like a white-hot fire. I clenched my fists trying to calm myself. I would never be able to forget that night. The night he walked into our pack and acted like he was in charge. Without even consulting with Dad, who was the alpha, he had come in and did whatever shit he wanted. Dad lost face after that, but of course, he wouldn't let his brother, or anyone know that. The pack insulted him and he just took it. Yet, he made a mistake by bowing down to Rayhan. Pathetic. We were and always will be the outcasts, but when I become alpha, I will break away from the council. I don't follow any rules, and there's no way I'd ever sit around a table of entitled pretending to give a shit about the country. I pulled out a cigarette and was about to light it when I heard a phone ring, and paused, thinking who was calling Dad at this hour? After their small exchange, I realized it was Alejandro. I stayed silent listening to Dad's side of the conversation. I got the gist of the conversation, so there was a price to pay for killing it, and their mother wanting to do the deed. I felt a tad bad for her and Rayhana if anything, but the fact Rayhan didn't know. I smirked. Now I hope he understood how it felt to have people do shit without asking you. Leo isn't ready to be alpha. I froze as anger flared up inside of me. I wasn't ready to be alpha? I have not lacked in any way. The urge to go up there and ask Dad right now about what he means, was on my mind, but instead, I stormed off. Lashing out would only make Dad say I was proving his point. I'll talk to him tomorrow. It was the following day and Dad and I were in the kitchen. Dad had thrown breakfast together and I was sitting at the counter digging into the pile of toast, eggs, bacon, and sausages Dad had fried up. I was still annoyed off with what he had said to Alejandro, and I planned to ask him. So Maria's going to sacrifice herself. I declared emotionlessly. Dad reacted, and he almost dropped the pan on his feet. You were in the yard last night? Yeah, pretty glad I was, considering I learned I'm not fit to become alpha anytime soon. I replied, unable to keep the anger out of my voice. Leo, don't get me wrong, you have achieved a lot and are able to defeat all the warriors despite not having shifted, but your anger gets the better of you and I can't make you alpha until you work on that. I bent the fork in my anger, tossing it on the counter as I looked at Dad clenching my jaw. Yet you haven't noticed my anger is only displayed when I'm around that? When do I lose my shit around here? I growled. How about now? Dad glared at me, his eyes flashing and his aura swirling around him. I scoffed bitterly, sitting back on my stool. So in simpler terms, you're just concerned about my retaliation towards your so-called family. Our eyes met, and I shook my head in disgust. Well, enjoy it. I hate the fact that I'm even tied to that name. I'm out. Leo, sit down. You don't get what this family has done for us. This family hasn't done shit. The crap they act entitled to was your birthright. You are not less than them, and I am done with you acting like it's okay or we are beneath them, but that's the thing here, isn't it? We are treated like that. I shouted, anger rushing through me and all I could see was red. Leo. That is not how we are treated. They have welcomed us home. They helped us despite the things I have done in siding with Endora. Dad snapped. N.A., you're just blinded, and you know what? I once thought you were a brave alpha, but you're nothing more than a loser, Dad. I'm just glad Mom isn't around to see the dud her mate has become. I said coldly, the flash of hurt that crossed his face was satisfying. The moment I turn 18, the first thing I will do is change my name to Leo Hermann. It's an insult to be called Rossi. Leo. Your mother would not approve of you taking her name. She would not want her son to throw aside his lineage. You just can't take it, but you know what? To with the Rossis. I'd rather only be tied to her and be known as her son alone, and as for the title of Alpha, keep it for now. Sooner or later it will be mine. I simply smiled coldly. But pack or not, I will raise single-handed. With those final words, I turned, giving him the finger, and left the kitchen, slamming the door so hard I heard it splinter. Kiera. It was the following day. Alejandro had looked restless and had been distracted all morning. Although he had his block up, whatever was worrying him was obviously something he didn't want to share with me. It did hurt, but I knew he had his reasons. I myself felt so uncertain after what had happened with Dante last night. I wanted to tell Alejandro about it, but I wasn't managing to get him for even a moment alone. Plus, I didn't want him to get too worried, however I wasn't stupid enough to keep silent about it. I'll see you later, amor mio. He cupped my face, giving me a deep kiss before he pulled away. I nodded, unable to even argue. I had to wait for a few minutes, knowing he was busy. I love you. I whispered. Love you more. He gave me a smirk, placing another kiss on my lips. His actions made me close my eyes, enjoying the feel of his touch before he walked away. Are you okay? Mom's soft voice came as she placed her hands on my shoulders from behind. She looked at me with concern. Well, I couldn't tell Alejandro, but I could tell Mom at least. Just something happened last night and it's unnerving me. I sighed, turning towards her. Mom smiled, brushing my hair off my face. Come on, let's go somewhere else, she said, and I nodded as she led me through to the back garden. Taking a seat on a bench, Mom turned towards me. She remained silent, waiting for me to start talking. Last night I touched Dante and it burned, and then I had this terrifying urge to grab a knife. I whispered, my heart pounding at the horrible thoughts and actions that had tempted me. Mom's smile vanished. She frowned, her eyes flashing silver before she placed a hand on my shoulder, giving it a comforting squeeze. There is no way you would ever do that. Don't feel bad, Kia, that is not you wanting to do that. We are all here for you, and if it ever feels like it's getting stronger, we are all around you. You will never be alone, she said softly, hugging me tightly. I closed my eyes and nodded, hugging her back. Inhaling her comforting, warm scent. No matter how old we are, we will always need our parents' comfort. Mama. Azura's voice came as she stormed into the garden, hands on her hips. Yes, baby. Mom replied, turning to her. She sighed dramatically and came over to us both, looking at us both before shaking her head. Seriously, you two are out here, and me and Sky are trying to get Catalia to come play with us, she complained. Mom and I both frowned, as worry flitted through me. I didn't like to see her so broken. I may not have my memories, but from the videos I have been watching, she was a happy child. Skyla ran over too and nodded in agreement with Azura. She's doing it again. Doing what? Mom asked gently, despite the concern on her face. Using one hand to do everything, she was buttoning her cardigan and she was refusing to put her teddy down, and then when I said I'll help her, she refused and was going to cry. Sky explained, her eyes were full of sadness and worry. I sighed heavily, feeling the pain in my chest only growing. You girls play, I'll go to cot, okay? I said, reaching over and giving both their cheeks a slight pull. Oh we. Skyla giggled before smiling and giving me a nod. Okay, Mama. The girls ran off, and I stood up. Don't worry too much, Kiera, we are here. Mom promised, and I nodded. She was right, I wasn't alone, and everyone was around. If I felt strange again, I would just call for help or tell someone instantly. Thanks, Mom. I replied before I headed inside to find my little Catalia. I didn't need to search, as the girls had said she was in her bedroom sitting on the bed clutching the same teddy bear tightly. Her long hair fell down her back, and although she looked like the cutest little angel sitting there, the sadness in her eyes remained and it broke my heart. I walked over to her, crouching before the bed, and placed my hands on her tiny knees. Hey, my little princess. The weather is so warm outside, why are you sitting here? I asked gently, cupping her cheek with one hand. Her arm tightened around her teddy, and she shrugged. I don't want to go outside, she said, staring down at her lap. Why not? I asked softly. She shook her head, refusing to speak. So I stood up and sat next to her on the bed, putting my arm around her. So where did you get this teddy from? I'm sure I haven't seen it before. I tried to make conversation. Rayhana ordered it online for me. She said, brushing her hand over its fur gently. Tell me, what your teddy bear's name? She remained quiet. Shall I name it? What is a good name for a teddy bear as cute as this one? I looked around. Maria had told me she had usually preferred to play with her array of pastel-colored teddies and unicorns. In comparison, this one was a rather interesting and a different choice. A quick scan of her bed and the room told me it was far different. Skyla's toys were obvious from her action figures, Disney villain collection, and superhero dolls. Then there was Catalia's pile of pretty and fluffy teddies. Her porcelain and baby dolls were a stark contrast to the teddy in her hand. What about Coco? I suggested, looking at its dark brown fur. She shook her head, tightening her hold on it, before she moved it and looked down at its face. No? Okay, what about Brownie? No, his name is Kike. She said quietly. With sudden realization, I stared down at the teddy. Hazel eyes and brown fur. Kike Enrique. Goddess, she had named it after him. I fought back the surge of tears that threatened to spill and scooped her into my arms, hugging her tightly. Oh baby! I love the name. I complimented her lightly, rocking her gently. He is so cute. He is. She whispered, hugging it tightly. I wish I could turn back time and make all her pain go away, make Enrique's pain go away. I wish I could protect every child on this earth. Shall I tell you a story, Kot? I asked gently, looking down at the top of her head, a head of hair that was the exact same shade as mine. She nodded. I rested my chin on top of her head and gazed out of the window. Once upon a time, there was a little boy. He was brave, compassionate, and caring. But then, he was treated horribly, until he became cold and angry, but that was only because he was hurting inside. Then a little princess was kidnapped and kept locked away, and even though he knew he shouldn't, he still took care of her, but in the process, he was punished severely. Her little heart thumped, and I stroked her back as I rocked her gently. He lost something special, but it wasn't the princess' fault, it was the monster's fault. The very same one who was keeping the princess captive. But you know when the princess and the little boy were saved? He became angry and would say hurtful things to the princess, and she took it to heart. I felt something wet spill onto my arm and hugged her tightly as I continued, letting her cry quietly. And even when the time came for the little boy to leave, he refused to listen to the princess, leaving her little heart broken. But fear not, that isn't the end of the story. I said softly, placing another kiss on her head. It isn't? She asked quietly. No, because that little princess grew up into a strong, pure-hearted woman, and that little boy grew up into a strong, yet cold-hearted knight. They would meet again, and that little princess and the little boy would have their own journey to heal their hearts. I frowned, confusion rippling through me. I don't know why I had said those words, but they felt so real. Almost as if I was certain of them. Catalia looked up at me, hope lighting up her small face. They will. Yes. I promised. A small smile crossed my face. I was certain that one day Enrique Escarra and Catalia Rossi would cross paths once again. A glimmer of hope washed across her face. She looked out of the window and nodded. Then, I will work on being a strong woman, someone who can help others, not someone who always needs help, she said quietly. I smiled and nodded. Yes, always remember you are so much more than you think, I said softly. She nodded and a small smile crossed her lips. She turned her gaze to the teddy. We will meet again, right, Mama? She asked again, as if she needed that certainty. I nodded, not only because of that feeling I had but because I would make sure they did. One day, I would let Kat go and find him. She didn't get the closure she needed, so all I could do was give her some hope until that day came. A short while later, Catalia agreed to go and play with the others. I fixed the bedding, deciding I would go and try to bake some brownies or something to keep myself busy. I left the girls' room and was about to go down the stairs when I suddenly looked down the hall. It was currently empty, as the guards were now only stationed here during the night in case Dante needed something or if something happened. I walked to my room and entering it, I headed straight to the closet, frowning as I realized I had no idea what I was doing here. Fear suddenly rushed through me the moment I grabbed one of the daggers at the back of my wardrobe. Daggers that I saw every day yet didn't think anything of. I tried to pull back, but my hands seemed to have a mind of their own. My chest was pounding as I slid the dagger from its leather sheath. No. What was I doing? I moved away from the drawer, closing it slowly, the panic within me growing. Alejandro. I needed to tell Alejandro. I frowned, trying to concentrate on the mind link when a splitting pain rushed through my head, making my free hand grab my head as I groaned in agony, but even then, my feet continued towards the exit of my room. Emotions that were not my own flared inside of me: anger, hatred, vengeance. Please stop. I pushed against them, trying to mind link anyone, but I wasn't able to. Alejandro. Could he feel my panic through the bond? Fear enveloped me, suffocating me. No, please no. I couldn't stop it, it was far too strong. Terror filled me as I realized where I was headed, my feet dragging me down the hallway without my consent. My grip was tight on the dagger, and my stomach sank as Dante's bedroom came into sight. They were victims of Endora too, yet were punished. For example, Kiera was forced under a spell to work for someone and is commanded to beat, let's say, Azura. She's in her senses but her body is not under her control. She carries on doing this for months and when she is finally free suffers PTSD and the nightmares of what she was forced to do remain. She is promised a new start and begins her journey trying to heal and overcome her trauma, but then suddenly someone comes for revenge. Should she still be beaten and kept in prison chained with silver for a few weeks? Although she was a victim too? How would she feel given new hope and then it was taken away ruthlessly whilst her own alpha simply watched? How would her children feel, not understanding why their mother is being punished and scared that they weren't really safe in their own pack? The rogues were not main characters but they are still people with emotions and had painful lives, many suffering trauma just like real-life soldiers do. There are always two sides of a story and Leo was born as a rogue and raised in this abusive environment. He used to even sneak Del food out of compassion. Yes, he knows she was abused, but they were also suffering, but in the end even the rogues were punished once more. Kiera Dante's room was coming ever closer, and even as I tried to stop myself, I was only succeeding in slowing myself down a little. I looked around in desperation, trying to scream or make some sort of sound. No. I am Kiera Westwood. No, I am Kiera Rossi, the queen, and the Luna of this pack. Mother! I won't do this, I can't. I gripped the dagger tightly. I would rather die than hurt my son. The hatred and fury coursing through me were growing stronger with each passing second, and I was beginning to be pushed into a corner of my own mind. My wolf's pain and restlessness mixed with my own. Not today. No one was going to take my body from me. Summoning every ounce of willpower I could, I forced all my concentration into trying to break free. I screamed as I forced my aura to burst through the barrier that seemed to be subduing it. It swirled around me like a storm, a clear purple visible around me as it blasted in all directions. I heard glass shattering nearby and distant shouts as my body began moving towards Dante's room faster. I had to stop myself. I was not going to let this happen. Using all my might, I twisted the dagger and plunged it into my chest, making me gasp as pain rushed through me and I fell to the ground, the blade inches from my heart. The smell of blood filled the air as it dripped onto the floor. I let go of the dagger as I bent forward on all fours, trying to regain control. Why was this happening? My own resilience, anger, worry, and determination mixed in with anger and resentment that did not belong to me. The emotions burned through me. It felt like my head was being split open as we both fought for control. Get out of my head! My only response was splitting pain as my head erupted with agony and I curled up, groaning as my vision darkened. Kia! Raven! Stay back! A flare of hatred rushed through me and my eyes flashed as she came into view, her black and pink hair bouncing as she ran to my side as fast as she could, crouching down by me. I saw her eyes glaze and knew she was mind-linking as she reached out for me. You won't touch me. Those words didn't belong to me. Goddess! Back off! I found myself spitting. Not happening, babe. Raven replied, and in a flash I was on my back. It was obvious she didn't want to hurt me with the blade still stuck in my chest. I felt like a puppet stuck in a body I had no control of, as I yanked the dagger out and kicked her off me. She blocked as I swung the dagger at her, her eyes meeting mine as she tried to disarm me. She glanced behind me as if hoping for someone to show up. Kiera, listen to me. I shoved her off as I ran for Dante's room, only for Raven to aim a sharp kick at my hip and yank me backwards once more. Shit, I'm sorry. She whimpered as her knee connected with my chest, slamming me to the ground. Kia! I glared up at her, grabbing her hair and throwing her off me, into the far wall. Her tiny body slid to the ground but she was on her feet faster than I was expecting, although I wasn't much slower. I ran at her, anger rushing through me. She was in the way of my mission. I raised my dagger, praying she ran, when an arm locked around my neck and another around my waist. Mom? Kia, listen to me. Her strong yet soothing voice came, her aura swirling around her. I slammed my elbow into her side and, hooking my ankle around hers, yanked her legs from under her. Twisting around with more power than I ever had before, I threw her across the hall. She rolled over, breaking her fall, turning her silver eyes blazing as she looked at me. For a moment, She looked like a phoenix, her aura so intense, her red hair falling in front of her face, and the look of determination told me that she was not afraid of anything. I heard running and turned to see Maria and Rehana appear at the top of the stairs. "Kiera, take control." Maria's voice came, her eyes blazing as she walked towards me. "Take another step and I will kill myself." I hissed. How did I lose control of myself? I thought things were getting better. "You won't." Rehana's voice came before she whispered a spell, and then everything went dark. Her magic confused my senses, and no matter which direction I looked, I saw nothing. The jinn's irritation rose within me, and I realized Rehana was using my own weakness against me. "She's injured," I heard Raven murmur from somewhere in the darkness as I swung the dagger, making sure no one came close. I felt the force within me grow. "Rehana, leave!" I heard Mom shout as my own powers burst from me and illuminated the area. I was thrown to the ground. I wasn't sure who had thrown me to the ground, as both Maria and Mom were pinning my arms down and the dagger was torn from my hold by Maria as I struggled against them. "Kiera!" A deep voice came. "Alejandro?" Pain erupted in my chest and a wave of guilt washed over me. What on earth was I doing? I looked up into the blazing red eyes of my mate, the festering resentment within me growing, and even when Mom and Maria let go, I found myself pulling away, not wanting his touch. Or more like the jinn didn't want Alejandro near me. Bending down, he lifted me by my waist, his eyes scheming over my chest, concern and fear flashing in his eyes. "You need to lock me away," I said, struggling to form my words as I pushed him away. I didn't trust myself. "Amor mio," he grabbed my arm and pulled me into his chest. Intense sparks rushed through me and, although the other emotions seemed to dissipate a little, the urge to kill him was still very strong. I'm a danger to him, to my family, to everyone. Didn't he see that? I could see Dad's pained look and Liam's, my guilt growing as he helped Raven to her feet, kissing her as he held her tight. The concern in Maria's eyes, Mom's worry. Rehana. I had failed them all. "Alejandro, you need to lock me away, I'm losing my mind," I whispered. His embrace was tight, pinning my arms to my side. My heart thundered as I struggled fruitlessly in his arms. "I got you." His words hit me hard and I stilled. Silent tears trickled down my cheeks and the pain within my chest hurt far more than the wound that was beginning to soak us both in blood. I closed my eyes, inhaling his scent. I didn't need my memories to tell me that this was my safe place, my home. "She needs to be checked over, Alejandro." Maria's voice came. I realized his heart was pounding and I pressed my lips against the fabric of his shirt, kissing his chest. This was my fault, I have worried him. "Dante. Don't let Dante see this," I said, my vision darkening. "Don't worry, he's being kept occupied," Alejandro replied before lifting me up bridal style. Our eyes met, but I was unable to hold his gaze. I looked away, a wave of sadness washing over me. I had failed him. It was an hour later, and I was partially healed. Rehana had tried to heal me, but whatever was controlling me was making it harder for her, so we had told her to stop. She was pregnant and we couldn't risk it. I had fallen unconscious and had caused more damage by exerting myself. Even when I was heavily injured, I had lost a lot of blood. A pack doctor had come to check the injury and had bandaged me up. I was now in my bedroom with Liam and Raven sitting on the bed, whilst Alejandro was pacing the room. He had changed into a clean shirt and was currently smoking a cigarette. "I'm sorry," I said, looking at Raven. She was sitting between Liam's thick legs, looking incredibly tiny. "Don't be. It was like old times, us two having a friendly match," she replied, making a fist as she smiled cheerily. "There was nothing friendly about it. I still hurt you." I sighed. "It wasn't you," Alejandro said coldly as Liam stroked my hair, his other arm tightly around his bite-sized Luna yet. "Don't blame yourself, Kia," Liam added, looking over at Alejandro. "I thought his hold on her had weakened." "I thought so too, but it seems not," Alejandro said, now walking over to the bed. White-hot anger ripped through me, and my eyes flashed, making Alejandro pause as he was about to reach out for me. "Kiera," he retracted his hand, taking a drag on his cigarette as he moved back. "Stay away," I said quietly, my heart pounding as I felt the urge to get out of the bed and attack him. "Nothing can keep me away from you," he growled, stubbing the cigarette on the ashtray on the bedside table and sitting down on the bed next to me. "I don't get how his control has grown," Liam murmured. "Dulsanra had a theory," Raven replied, falling silent when Alejandro glanced at her. Hatred blazed through me, and I felt my claws extract. "Her aura," Raven murmured. "Lock me away, Alejandro, where I can't hurt myself or anyone," I begged. The fear of hurting my loved ones terrified me. I needed to be kept away. "Kiera, Alejandro. Don't you get it? I'm losing my sanity. Do you want me to run away? No, right? Then lock me in the cells so I don't hurt anyone," I shouted, frustration clear in my voice. I was fighting it, but it was obvious with each passing day his control over me was growing. Or more like every passing minute. "We'll give you both a moment," Liam said quietly as he stood up. Raven glanced at me, worry in her unique colored eyes before they both left the room, leaving me alone with Alejandro. His hand threaded into my hair, and he pressed his forehead against mine, sending sparks of pleasure through me. "We are going to get through this. Keep fighting like the queen you are." I nodded, my heart squeezing. "I plan to, but I'm scared to hurt anyone," I said quietly. His gaze dipped to my lips before traveling down to my neck. He frowned thoughtfully before bending down, pulling me up slightly against him. My heart pounded due to his closeness, making tingles spread through me, his scent enveloping me. "Marking you helped last time," he murmured more to himself than to me. I was about to push him away, but for some odd reason my body wasn't fighting him anymore. In fact, it seemed to welcome his closeness. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. "Alejandro," I tried to warn him, feeling the anger and excitement course through me, but instead of listening, he sank his teeth into my neck. Pain ripped through me, mixed with a river of pleasure, but I couldn't focus on it because what terrified me was the feeling of victory that rushed through me. An emotion that was not my own. Fear filled me, and using all my energy, I shoved Alejandro off me. My heart was pounding as he looked at me with concern, licking the blood from his lips. Relax, amor mio, it's going to. He suddenly tensed, bending over as he began coughing violently. Alejandro, I felt like a bucket of iced water was poured over me, seeing the blood that dripped through his fingers as he continued to cough. Pain filtered through the bond and I clamped my hands over my mouth. Alejandro. I'm fine, he said hoarsely. His face was ashy and I could see the thin layer of sweat that now covered his forehead. No, you're not. I whispered, horrified. The temptation to plunge my hand into his back was consuming me, but instead, I staggered off the bed, a hand to my chest, putting distance between us. I needed to get help. He gripped the bed with one hand as another bout of cough racked his body, and with icy realization the truth hit me. My blood had poisoned him. Alejandro, I hated seeing the fear on her face as she put distance between us, running to the door. Liam! She shouted, pulling the door open, turning and rushing to my side. She hesitated, falling to her knees a few feet from me. Alejandro, baby, are you okay? She asked, reaching out, then hesitating as Liam and Raven entered. I'll get help. Raven murmured, running off. Alejandro. Liam was by my side, and although my entire body was burning up and felt like it was being torn apart from inside, I was in my senses. Take care of her. I growled, staggering to my feet. I'm fine, amor mio, calm down. I wanted to pull her into my arms, but she was scared of being near me and I did not want to make her even more panicked. I'm going to get some antidote. I heard Liam say as he lifted Kiera to her feet, taking her out of the room with him. I could feel my body fighting it and the urge to shift took over. A menacing growl that I knew filled every corner of the mansion ripped from my throat as I transformed. Al! Darien's voice came. I turned as he waved 2 bottles of antidotes. Something told me they wouldn't work, but I still grabbed them in my huge, clawed hand and downed them. Nothing. I still felt like shit. I'm fine. I growled through the link, sitting on the bed in lichen form. Uncle. Tell her not to try healing me, this could be the exact same shit as to what happened with Dulsanra and Dante. I commanded through the haze. Rehana, you can't heal him. I heard Darien say as my vision darkened. She was arguing but someone took her away. The last thing I saw was Elijah and Scarlet enter and then everything went black. I opened my eyes groggily. My body was killing but it wasn't as bad as it had been earlier. The sun was still out, which meant I hadn't been out for long. I sat up, squinting, and I was about to get out of bed when Scarlet placed her hand on my shoulder. I do not want to see you ever again. Stay in bed. She almost growled. Seriously? Is Elijah's asterisk that small that seeing my big scared you? I shot back. I heard someone let out a sharp, irritable exhale and turned to see Darien and Elijah there. He's perfectly fine if he can run his mouth. Elijah glared. I smirked. He didn't deny that I was bigger than him. How long was I out? I asked, resting back against the cushions and pulling the duvet over my waist. I wasn't planning on shifting, my pants and fitted boxers were indeed gone. Just over an hour. How are you feeling? Darien asked. I won't lie and say that I'm not in any pain, but it is better than before. Did you guys give me something or some shit? Something? Try several things, a few enchantments which didn't include direct magic from Rayhana, so don't get angry. Every antidote in existence. We even tried Scarlet's blood. Darien replied, frowning at me. I could tell from his pale skin color that he was shaken. What worked? I don't think anything worked, I think your body just fought it. Scarlet answered. Where is she? I asked. I needed to see her. Silence. I asked. Where is Kiera? In the cells. She asked to be put there. Elijah answered quietly. Her pain was unexplained, and I said nothing about Scarlet's shock at seeing me. Getting out of bed, I crossed the room, hearing her turn away sharply. I went through to the dressing room and grabbed a pair of sweatpants. And you all did just that? I asked, re-entering the bedroom after grabbing a pair of sneakers. Just that walk was exhausting, but I was not going to let it get to me. You should have seen her state. I wouldn't want my daughter locked up if there was another solution, Scarlet said icily. But she needed this for her own sanity. Yet, I still didn't give a shit. I left the room even when they called me. I needed to see her. Al. Darien caught up with me. You can barely hold yourself together. I growled, my eyes blazing as I looked at him. I am fine. I hissed, you locked your Luna away. Under her command, he said quietly. I know that. But it didn't mean it made it any easier. We left the mansion and the moment we got to the cells I started scanning each one. She's in the cells on the lower floor. Darien said hesitantly. Why? I asked, trying to control my rage. Her orders. Stay here. I warned, taking the keys and unlocking the metal barred door. Entering the cold corridor, I headed down the stone steps to the lower floor. A place that was entirely made of silver and stone. Kiera was standing in the far cell, her arms wrapped around her waist as she stared at the ground, her scent overpowering the smell of silver, wolfsbane, and damp. My queen. Amor mio. Alejandro. Thank the goddess you are okay. She exclaimed, running to the bars and grabbing hold of them, only to flinch before letting go and hiding her hands behind her back. The emotions that ran through me were far too much to put into words, seeing her in this place. She was the queen, yet here she was in the cells which were reserved for the worst of criminals. I walked towards the bars, glancing at the chains that hung from the floor and ceiling behind her. To my irritation, I saw her feet were tied to the chains on the ground. She shouldn't be here. It was making me physically sick, seeing her in this environment. Show me your hands. I commanded, my voice holding a dangerous edge, but she shook her head. I'm fine. She replied stubbornly, yet her voice was soothing as ever. Kiera. Her eyes flashed with hatred, and I knew she was still battling for control. Leave. She said, closing her eyes. When is it ever that way between us? I asked quietly, unlocking the cell door. If one of us pushes the other away, the other doesn't listen. I left the keys in the door knowing I needed to be careful. Right now she was stronger than me. Alejandro. Stay away. she growled, backing away from me. I closed the gap between us. No, you're mine, amor mio, and there is nothing that can keep me from you. Not even the goddess herself, so what's a djinn gonna do? I asked arrogantly. Her eyes flashed, but within the purple, I saw orange. She only stopped when her back hit the stone wall behind her, the chains dragging taut from around her ankles. Silver chains. She was wearing jeans, but I knew they would still be affecting her. Alejandro, just listen, please, if you love me. Her claws were extended, she was about to dig them into her own thighs to control herself, but I was not having her harming herself again. She had stabbed herself earlier to stop herself. I grabbed her wrists, pinning them to the walls by her head, making her gasp. Her eyes returned to her beautiful blue-green and I pressed my forehead to hers, relishing the sparks that coursed through me. We are going to get through this, because meters or miles apart, we will always be together. Just hold on for a little longer and I will handle. I growled, my eyes blazing red. Her pounding heart calmed, and her eyes shut. A small hint of a smile crossed her face, and I knew that she had lost the battle for now. Are you ready to die? She asked in a cold, quiet tone, opening her eyes. The glint of orange had covered the blue in her eyes, bleeding into the green. For my family, if it comes to it, then yeah, I'm ready. The question is, are you ready to be sent back to the pits of hell? I asked coldly. Or better, to destroy you into oblivion. It's not easy to get rid of me, let alone kill me. Yet you are bound. If you really were as powerful as you act, you would have come here. You would be able to take Dante, but you can't. I'm not sure why, but you aren't as powerful as you like to pretend. I hissed. The urge to rip him apart consumed me and I couldn't wait for the day we ended him. I had hit a nerve, a look of pure hatred and evil crossed Kiera's face, an expression I had never seen on her face. Ever. Even when angry, there is no evil within her. I will fix this, I'll destroy him. Just hold on, beautiful. Even if she was pushed to the corner of her mind, I would save her from it. You don't know what you are talking about. Oh, I do, and the fact you are getting annoyed off, just means I hit the nail on the head. What do you want with Dante? A smirk twisted on her face, she looked at me with contempt but didn't answer. Well, fine. Two can play this shit, I was not going to let it rile me up. The next time we talk, it's going to be face to face, not when you are using my woman to hide behind like the coward you are. I growled threateningly. Let's hope I don't kill her down here, after all. I will have no use for her if she's in the cells. That was it. Her eyes flashed purple, I saw her struggle to take control as the djinn tried to rip free from my hold, elongating her claws and pulling one hand free. My stomach twisted as I realized, he was aiming for her heart. Not under my watch. I growled, slamming her hand back against the wall, my aura rolling off me. Tie me. Kiera groaned as she struggled. The red from her chest injury was beginning to coat her top once again. She wasn't healed as it was. She needed to stay calm. I didn't argue, pulling her to the middle of her room as she struggled against me. It would be a lie if I denied that she was making it hard for me. I could taste blood in my mouth again. I was still weak. I heard Darien enter the cells, but I didn't spare him a glance. I managed to clamp her wrist into the cuffs, slamming them shut as she tried to bite into my wrist once more, the clang echoing through the empty cell. I will kill you. She growled as I pulled the chains tight, so her arms were spread wide and there was no risk left of her harming herself. I'll look forward to it, I replied, tightening her ankles so her legs were slightly apart. No one is hurting what belongs to me. She struggled, pulling at the chains, and I knew that they would weaken her. Maybe keeping her unconscious might be better. I'll talk to Callum. With those final words, I tore the lower half off her top and took hold of her chin. I'm going to put an end to this shit, I promise you, amor mio. I said quietly, kissing her plush lips softly. Hoping that deep inside she could feel my emotions, letting the barrier down between us. Her eyes softened, and for a moment she kissed me back, before I moved away. I'm going to tie your mouth in case he tries to get you to bite your tongue off, I said quietly, placing the torn shirt between her plump lips. She nodded slowly as she fought back her tears. Be brave, my queen. I tied her mouth, inhaling the scent of her sandy brown hair. The scent of her shampoo mixed with her own intoxicating scent was soothing and, leaning in, I planted a soft kiss on her forehead. Keep strong, keep fighting. She nodded. I love you. Her soft reply came. Love you more than life itself. I caressed her cheek before I stepped away, putting my walls back up. I was breaking inside, but I wouldn't show her that, because no matter what, I would save her. Turning, I left the cell, locking the door after me. I didn't look back now. I wouldn't be able to leave her if I did. I would stay down here by her side if I could. But I needed to lead our army and destroy this. It took every inch of my willpower not to turn and break her out, seeing her in that state, having to do that to her. It was so painful that I was finding it hard to breathe. Wait for me, because it's high time I unleashed hell and showed this that no one messes with Alejandro Rossi or his family. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.